If you can keep the noise down, the level down, please. We could have the Central Coast Alliance, United for a Sustainable Economy, Marciela Morales.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you very much again for all your service and your work. I'm always very much amazed, given the schedule that you're keeping, the degree of alertness and remembering so much information. Our local Ventura County Star referenced you all as the rock band of redistricting. So given your schedule, so you keep performing at an incredible pace. So thank you very much. I am going to be focusing on the Central Coast, and the Central Coast includes 6 counties, and so geographically they are distinct in terms of the North Central Coast, which includes Monterey, San Benito, and Santa Cruz, and the South Central Coast, Ventura, Santa Barbara, and San Luis Obispo counties. These are, as you all very well know, the prioritized legal criteria. And one of the things in listening to prior speakers that have focused on the state level that's become very apparent to me is that there are 7 criteria. There is not one criteria. And that's the challenge of your work in incorporating all 7 criteria, although they are prioritized. Looking at it from a state level, I compare it to sort of, our eyesight. Our eyesight is not complete if we only have our long-range vision. Our eyesight is not complete if we only have our detail or immediate vision. Hence the need for bifocals, because our eyesight is not complete without both the big picture as well as much as possible incorporating the detail. And so that's where I think the communities of interest information comes in that depth of perspective. And I'm glad to provide this opportunity to share information about that depth for the Central Coast region. The Monterey, Santa Cruz, and San Benito counties include a vast majority of working class, communities of concentrated poverty, people of color, and immigrants. So for this community of interest in this region, the best representation keeps together the Salinas Valley, which includes Salinas all the way down south to the edge of the Monterey County border, the cities of Watsonville and Hollister. Hollister having only about 55,000 people in the county of San Benito. Then when I reference Hollister, essentially I'm referencing San Benito County. These cities and unincorporated surrounding communities have over 65% people of color, predominantly Latino, with similar socioeconomic, language, and cultural integrity. Much of the focus today has been on urban communities with similar diverse concentration. And unfortunately, our diverse, low-income immigrant communities in the more rural areas get forgotten because we don't have the same concentration of population. And we're here to say that people in rural areas, particularly low-income and diverse communities, those each individual, one person, one vote, carry the same weight as urban people. So given this, another point that I want to bring up is the cities and census-designated places that have over 25% adult non-citizen population. The focus on CVAP implicitly brings up the issue of non-CVAP. And these end up being very vulnerable communities. They're adult non-citizen, which means that they cannot vote. And yet they are integral parts of these communities that keep these communities alive, the local economy, even the state economy, as we talk about agriculture. And so in this region, there are these listed communities that are over 25% non-citizen adult population. And so that needs to be taken into consideration. The community or county of Monterey, second to only Los Angeles and Fresno counties, has the highest number of these communities, very vulnerable. So together, these communities would represent about 732,000 people, about half are Latino, and I include in your packet about how many districts that would comprise. With regards to this area, in terms of VRA Section 5 and 2, we are not attorneys and we are by no means experts on VRA Section 5 or 2, and so we put that out front. Based on communities of interest, though, and given the existing districts that apparently were compliant 10 years ago, then what we've heard from folks on the ground is to expand on the existing 27th and 28th Assembly districts going northward into Santa Clara County as necessary, to expand the existing 17th Congressional District, which already includes all of Monterey and San Benito counties and would now include almost all of Santa Cruz County, everything but the northern portion north of Scotts Valley. We've heard a lot, and I believe you all did as well in the Salinas hearing, which the tri-county area of Monterey, San Benito, and Santa Cruz County have a great deal in common and a lot of intersection. The district of most concern in that area is Senate District 12, because it doesn't conform to communities of interest. Folks on the coastal end don't see a great deal of connection with the inland Central Valley area and vice versa. I listened in on the Merced County hearing and heard that from the inland county as well. So working off of the existing Senate District 12, we propose a slight modification that would keep the Latino majority and would also maintain a high CVAP. And what that looks like, it's actually more compact than what exists now, is this map, which it would be all of Monterey County, all of San Benito County, and then it would be all of Merced County, and then it would be about the one-third southern portion of Madera County, which is actually where 93% of the population is, and then it would include the Watsonville area. Ventura, Santa Barbara County, working class, concentrated poverty communities, people of color, and immigrants. So this is the southern portion of the Central Coast. Again, we're focusing on what for us are communities that tend to be disenfranchised, working class, low-wage working, farm worker. And for this region, the communities of interest that need to stay together are Oxnard, Port Hueneme, the Santa Clara Valley, which is on the west side of Ventura County. You've gotten letters that testify from the community that East County, east of the Conejo Grade, want to maintain together. And so there's agreement that there's sort of a West County and an East County. In Santa Barbara County, the areas of concern are Santa Maria, Guadalupe, and Lompoc in the northern end. And this is a community that has been seriously disenfranchised over the last 10 years, and I'll show you a map of that. This is to reiterate that although the southern portion of the Central Coast has much in common, and that will result in a similar congressional district, but in terms of affinity, communities of interest, Ventura County and Santa Barbara County are much more linked together, those two counties together, which is why we end up having the Senate and the Assembly districts combining Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. So things like you have farm workers from the Santa Clara Valley that are transported into northern Santa Barbara County on a weekly basis, on a daily basis. Things like the NAACP chapter in Ventura County provides assistance to the smaller NAACP chapters in Santa Maria. The African American community in Ventura County, which is much larger, has fraternities that they sponsor at UC Santa Barbara. So even though they're in Ventura County, they have that connection to Santa Barbara. And you don't see as much of examples by comparison with San Luis Obispo County. In Ventura and Santa Barbara, we have distinctly concentrated communities of color. Those are the ones that are listed. They are also by far the largest. The largest city in the entire Central Coast is Oxnard, close to 200,000, and that's 84% people of color, low income, large immigrant community. In Santa Barbara County, Santa Maria is the largest city in Santa Barbara County, and it is 77% people of color. But just to show that it's not just about a race or ethnic issue, it's about socioeconomic issues that also overlap with race and ethnicity. And so these are the same communities that I've mentioned before, and you have there in your handout for future reference again in terms of how wedded, the low-income concentrated communities are also the communities of color. I want to really emphasize farm workers in terms of their relevance to the state of California, and therefore the importance of them being in districts where they can have the strongest representation possible, because they're an incredibly vulnerable population, and yet our economy in the state, it depends a great deal on agriculture. We're the 5th largest supplier of food to the world, and that is literally on the backs of farm workers. And those farm workers are concentrated in the Central Coast as well as the Central Valley, and they deserve representation. And so it also includes an indigenous Mixteco growing community from Oaxaca in the Oxnard area, in the Santa Maria area, in the Hollister and Salinas Valley, Watsonville area. Also for future reference in terms of, again, the connections between Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. And so this bringing us to what informed our recommendations that I will now get into in our maps. So this is the existing Senate District 19, and we see this as a very clear example of racial gerrymandering 10 years ago. The district literally goes right up to the largest and most concentrated areas that are low income, high immigrant, high concentration of communities of color, and that's Santa Maria. That's at the edge up in Santa Barbara County. Down in the far left corner or right corner is Oxnard, Port Hueneme, and then that small 3-community area, that's the Santa Clara Valley, Santa Paula, Fillmore, and Piru. Those communities were cracked into 3 different Senate districts and left out. So this is what we're proposing. It's it's a Senate district that relates to communities of interest that I've outlined. It's compact. It keeps counties together, all of Santa Barbara County and as much of Ventura County, right up to the Conejo Grade. And as we've said before, there's concurrence on both the east side of Ventura County over the Conejo Grade and on the west side that they are distinct communities. So it supports that. And it, combines our low-income communities of color together. So this is the existing assembly districts, and as you can see, we were cracked two, relatively speaking, small counties, cracked in 5 districts 10 years ago. And again, in both counties, the largest cities with over 70% people of color, low income, concentrated poverty, also included in counties where in districts where the base, the geographic, center of gravity is not where they're based. And so we are strongly against Senate District 15, which places Santa Maria along with San Luis Obispo County, which completely disenfranchises Santa Maria, and in splitting Oxnard to the south and including it in Los Angeles-based district. So our recommendation is 2 assembly districts, one that would be all of Santa Barbara County, again, keeping Santa Maria together with like communities within its own county, and a Ventura County-based district that would include the city of Oxnard without it being split as the largest city not only in the county but in the 6-county region, along with the similar communities of the Santa Clara Valley, as well as the city of Ventura. And then there would be, a 3rd district that would be based in the East County. Going back, I just want to point out that in this Ventura County-based district, that would include a majority Latino and a 50% voting age population. So that's not citizen voting age population, but voting age population. So in 10 years, we'll be at citizen voting age. 1 minute. Okay. This is the current congressional district. It's often been referred to the the ribbon of shame as an example of gerrymandering, although I think a lot of people have been actually happy with that district in that area. Nevertheless, it cuts across 3 different counties and so forth. And so we are proposing a much more compact regional congressional districts, San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara County, with just a little bit of coastal city of Ventura, and then the remainder of Ventura County would be 1 congressional district. It would keep the city of Ventura within that congressional district because it is the county seat of government, and so that would be in that district. And because of the population, there is surplus population, and in this particular map, the city that would be less split, given its population, would be the city of Simi Valley, and so that would be in an adjoining district with the Santa Clarita Valley. So that is my entire presentation. Perfect. Thank you. Yes.
All right. I had a question about the last maps you're talking about, with the Santa Barbara and Ventura counties. Could you clarify in terms of the city of Ventura itself? It looks like in both the congressional and assembly that it's either split or Ventura is in Santa Barbara. The city of Ventura is in Santa Barbara. Could you just clarify?
Yeah. And we can send you more detailed maps. But the ribbon that looks like it's sort of land, that actually is sort of coastal. So that's actually not land, just so that, the darker portion. And that's just to say that it's about, in the congressional district, about 9% of the city of Ventura would be
So the western part, the avenue of Ventura?
No. And in fact, when we were, getting to that level of detail, initially we had included the avenue. But that's a much more diverse, low-income community. And so instead, we kept coastal. And so it includes the coastal area of the city, like the Pierpont area, right essentially along the beach. And which is much more linked as a community of interest with the coastal area of city of Santa Barbara, let's say, than the avenue would be.
Okay. I'd like to see the level of detail. So then again, with this as well, you've chosen to keep Simi Valley out of the Ventura County-based district, so you left part of the county out of that.
Yes, because, and that goes to the requirement of the equal population. So the population of Ventura County is 823,000. So it's about 120,000 more than 1 congressional district. And so there's about, when you subtract the 9% from the city of Ventura, that still leaves you with about 111,000 people over the congressional district. And so then the city, in order to keep cities as whole as possible, the city with the least with the closest population to 111,000 was the city of Simi Valley. Conversely, you could take it instead out of Thousand Oaks, 111,000 out of Thousand Oaks. It would need to be on a border area right there. In those areas, again, there's been, letters saying that while they would prefer to stay with Ventura County, there are linkages with those border cities to LA.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing more detail about those areas, particularly where the splits happen. Thank you.
Yes. For purposes of disclosure, we're pretty good friends. And
I
we've
grew
worked
up in
together.
Fillmore. I grew up in the Santa Clara Valley.
Yeah, and we've worked together on several projects in and around Ventura County. I just wanted, perhaps, Ms. Morales, for you to share a little bit more about farm worker concentrations in the 3 counties, and perhaps something about the indigenous farm worker populations. Indigenous meaning Mixteco, Zapoteco, and maybe Purepecha concentrations.
Yeah. So the farm worker community, and again, just to reiterate how substantial, although in numbers they may not be that substantial, California includes 1/3 of the nation's farm worker population. There's no other region that comes close. The other region with the most farm workers is an 11-state a 9-state region, and that only includes 11% of the nation's farm worker population. Apart from their significance to the agricultural economy of the state, they are the most vulnerable, amongst the most vulnerable labor sectors. Their average, I think I had it in one of the handouts, their average income is about $19,000, $20,000 a year. 99% are Latino. Where did I have it? I missed it. Oh, here it is. 99% Latino, 75% earn less than $15,000 annually, 70% are uninsured. So there's about close to 63,000 in Ventura County. There's another, close to 20,000 in Santa Barbara County. In terms of the Mixteco indigenous community, so that's a growing population. They've been displaced from their communities of origin in Oaxaca, Mexico. Many of them don't even speak Spanish. They speak their native language, Triqui Mixteco, which raises issues of translation and communication just for basic services. And they are 46% are concentrated in the Central Coast, and the rest are in the Central Valley. So in the Central Coast, where the farm worker communities are concentrated, are the Santa Clara Valley, the Oxnard, Port Hueneme, Plains area, the Santa Maria area in northern Santa Barbara County, the Salinas Valley, Watsonville, Hollister, which is, again, why those communities, we keep referring to them as keeping them together.
When we were in Salinas, the question was raised about perhaps some differences among the farm workers, in the sense that the farm workers in Watsonville area tended to be more consistent is because of the crops allowed them to stay in one area longer. Did you find any of that differential in your studies?
Yeah, so for instance, the Mixteco community in the Oxnard, El Rio, and Island Acres area, they'll tend to migrate up to the Santa Maria area. The ones that are in, for instance, Hollister, have connections with the ones in Greenfield. But what was similar, so there is migration, but it is within the Central Coast region, as opposed to, because there's a large Mixteco community in the Central Valley. But you don't see sort of coastal to inland. You'll see coastal north-south migration and just community relations, because they come from the same towns, versus sort of coastal inland, which is what makes, again, like the Senate District 12 difficult, because they don't necessarily have relationships, with Merced area, farm workers. And so again, why we're recommending, keeping, Monterey County, San Benito, and the Watsonville area together as much as possible.
Thank you. Any other questions? Got Commissioner Antide.
Ms. Morales, at the congressional district map, I noticed, I think it looks very similar to the Maldive maps compared to yours. How do they differ? Or do they differ? The Maldive maps and yours.
How would they differ? Well, at least today, which was the first time I saw Maldive's presentation, they didn't really focus in on, aside from the north central coast, they didn't focus in on the southern central coast. So from the little bit that I could glimpse, it looked like, maybe you have a closer look at it, but it looked like in terms of the congressional district, it coincided. And it looks like, according to the assembly districts, northern assembly districts, they do. But from the little bit that I could glimpse, the southern, these assembly districts look very different. And the Senate district, like Senate District 15, that still runs from, Santa Cruz all the way to San Luis Obispo. I mean, no one on the ground, very few people on the ground like that, think that there's that much cohesion, from San Luis Obispo all the way up to Santa Cruz County. And so we have differences there.
Gracias.
Commissioner Dye, that'll be the last question, I think.
Yeah, it'll be really quick. I'm just
Close to that.
It's on. I was just wondering what was happening on the Channel Islands there.
Yeah, so those are the Channel Islands, so there's really no people there. I mean, a couple, but they're mostly people that work there. It looks funny, doesn't it? But you know, we want to, I mean, the Channel Islands, actually, we have that's a Channel Islands National Marine Sanctuary. It's like one of the most recent sanctuaries or national parks that have been designated. So it's definitely very important to our coastal region. And in fact, you don't see it in the map, but there's actually another island, that one pink one, that's Anacapa Island. But there's another island a little bit further south, and that's San Nicolas Island, and that's definitely very important to our region because it's connected to the Navy base, which is in Port Hueneme, and they do studies there.
So the pink part is actually a separate island.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That does correspond to whose county it belongs to, too.
Okay.
Any other questions from the commission? Ms. Morales, thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much.
We'll now hear from the Council of Black Political Organizations.